Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of Power Core Productions and Podcastings. I'm your host, Jerron Harrington, back to hit you another video. And today, we are going to be continuing What If Naruto Was Trained by Dr. Strange, Naruto Mystic Adventures Shippuden, Part 3. But first, as always, if you're a fan of the channel and everything else that we have, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is Power Core Productions and Podcastings that's to come out now and in the future. Well, first, before we start today's video, there is some exciting news that I have on the channel that I want to share with you all. If you've already seen already, then I want to just say it now. And that is that we have hit 2K on the channel. Now, I know in the grand scheme of things, 2K is really not that big of a deal. It's really not that special. But really, though, as we're pretty much at the 1 year mark since this channel was rebranded, we went from 20 subscribers to 2K in 1 year. And I must say, thank you. Thank you to all of you who support Power Core Productions and Podcastings. Thank you to everyone who listens to the stories and everything that I do. I truly appreciate it. Like I say time and time again, I cannot do it without you. You make the channel grow. You make the core grow. And for this special occasion, I am going to be doing a special Q&A. So over the next few videos that I have, please leave any questions that you have down in the comment section below. You can have more than one question. You can have 10 questions, 20 questions, 50 questions if you want to. I'm going to sort through all of them, pick out the best ones that I can find. If I don't get to all of you, I'm sorry, but I'll try to get you the next time, you know, that we do one of these things. But we're going to be doing a 2K Q&A. So leave your questions down in the comment section below. Tell me anything that you want to ask, anything you want to say. Just let me know, and I will try my best to get around them when we do the Q&A video. But seriously, thank you all for getting me to 2K. I truly appreciate it. It means the world to me, and I just hope that I can keep entertaining you guys, keep giving you guys more content for years and years to come. But now we are on a new road. We have hit the road to 2K. Now we are on the road to 3K. And as far as when we get 3K, I want to get 3K before the year is over. Before 2022 is over, I want to hit 3K or more. That is the goal. Before we get to December 31st, 2022, I want this channel to hit 3K as we go into the new year. But anyway, as always, I cannot do it without you guys. Thank you so much for your support. It means everything to me. It means the world to me. I truly appreciate it. I love every single one of you. And just thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so, so much. But anyway, without further ado, we're going to get into today's video. So as always, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. As some time had passed, Naruto, along with Sakura, and even Hinata, had become worried when Kakashi and Sasuke hadn't returned back to the village. Of course, they were not briefed on the full details as to what mission they had undergone, only knowing that they wouldn't be there for a while. For Naruto and Sakura, it didn't take long for them to put two and two together, realizing that they must have gone on the Tenchi Bridge mission. At first, they were a bit disheartened at the idea of not being included. They could have had all of Team 7 go in the first place, and maybe things would have turned out better. Although, if Kakashi was putting together a specific team with only he and Sasuke, then he must have had his reasons. All the same, after a week had passed, Naruto, along with Sakura, Haku, and Hinata, would make their way to the Hokage's tower to speak with Lady Tsunade, just to figure out what was going on, why they hadn't heard back from Sasuke or Kakashi's team. If they had been captured or defeated somehow, then they needed to know as soon as possible. However, as the four made their way inside of the tower, opening the door to the Hokage's office, they would see Tsunade sitting at her desk with Shizune beside her, along with the village elders, including Danzo. The elders would ask what they were doing here, and they would explain that they had come to ask for the whereabouts of Sasuke Uchiha and Kakashi Hatake, noting of their mission just a week prior. However, Tsunade would try to dissuade the conversation, as unfortunately that was what they were speaking about at that very moment. However, Danzo did not waste time. He explained the situation to them all, that he sent his own team to assist in the capture or defeat of Orochimaru. But when his team arrived, they were shocked at what they saw. A damaged battlefield all around, and the only one standing was Sasuke Uchiha, who seemingly took the body of Kakashi Hatake along with his brother, Itachi Uchiha. Hearing this, Naruto and the others would protest at once, as that didn't sound like something that Sasuke would do, and it didn't make any sense. However, Danzo would confirm that this was indeed what happened, and that if they didn't believe him, they could just ask one of his subordinates, who had undergone interrogation with a member of the Yamanaka clan. When they searched through his memories, the one thing they were able to see as clear as day was Sasuke leaving with Itachi Uchiha, with Kakashi held up in their arms. Of course, this did not tell the true story, but it gave the illusion that Danzo had wanted. For a while now, Danzo was looking to get rid of the Uchiha problem, and now it seemed as though he could clear two birds with one stone. In all likelihood, it wasn't the case, but he knew that Itachi was very fond of his brother. If he could turn the village against them both, then it would give him free range to hunt the two of them down and destroy them. Hinata would be the most upset as she spoke up amongst them all. She had grown very close to Sasuke. She had seen his character and the kind of man he was. He wasn't someone who would betray the village. However, Danzo would only yell at her and spew his venom, remarking that in the end, the truth was the truth, and that Sasuke had betrayed the village, and as a criminal, he must be hunted. Naruto would now be in anger, in rage as he stood to Danzo. Danzo's two guards quickly stood in front of Naruto, but Naruto gave off a strong sense of killing intent, imbued with his magic, a force that no one could even recognize, except for Sakura, who was also versed in the mystic arts, and even she was angry as well, as her chaos magic began to flare. Danzo stood to Naruto, his face unchanged, but deep inside he was a bit nervous. If he didn't know any better, he'd think he'd have to use one of his special abilities right now. However, Tsunade would tell Naruto to calm himself. All the same, from out of nowhere, a hand would appear on Naruto's shoulder. Naruto recognized who the man was, even though he looked like a regular Jonin wearing a mask. The taller man standing beside him. Both Naruto, Sakura, and Haku knew exactly who this was. It was none other than Zabuza Momochi, as he told Naruto to stand down and to calm his nerves. Naruto would do so and pull the power back within himself. Danzo would take his leave along with the other elders. However, as he left, he remarked that this is what happens when you let a demon out of its cage. This time, though, there was another flare of killing intent. But it didn't come from Naruto or Sakura or Zabuza. It came from Haku. As she looked back towards Danzo, the two of them making eye contact for a brief moment, he was frozen in fear. It only lasted but for a second, but he could feel the cold in her eyes, her icy glare upon him. The very mention of calling her Naruto a demon was enough to piss Haku off. She had worked to control her anger. She was never one to allow herself to be filled with such rage. But there were very few things that could piss her off. Messing with those closest to her was one of them, especially Naruto. To ever refer to him as a demon was more than enough to cross the line. Tsunade wanted to chastise her student, but even she felt the same sentiment as they left the room. Once they calmed, Naruto and the others would try to ask what was going on, but Tsunade wasn't entirely sure. From what they had gotten from the interrogations, it seemed as what Danzo said was correct, but she knew Danzo was a treacherous man, and someone who could often skewer things not to look as what they truly appeared. She couldn't fully explain what was going on, but she knew that action did need to be taken. But until she had all the facts, she wasn't going to make a rash decision. As such, Sasuke was not going to be branded a rogue criminal. Yet. In the meanwhile, two members of the Akatsuki would be wrapping up their battle with the Two Tails. Having collected the Jinchuriki, the duo known as Hidan and Kakazu would be preparing to leave when Zetsu would appear and give them their next set of orders to proceed to the Land of Fire, as that was where their next target would be. As they made their way, Hidan and Kakazu were shown to be an odd pair. They were known as the Immortal Duo, simply because neither could kill the other. Kakazu had always had a habit of killing his partners within the Akatsuki, and that's why he was given Hidan, someone he could not stand. A member of a rather extreme religious cult, the Way of Jashin, Hidan believed in absolute pain. He thrived on torture. Killing was his way of appeasing his god. And for him, that was all he cared for. And he was rather perturbed by Kakazu and his lust for money. But for Kakazu, the only thing that mattered to him was the almighty dollar. The two of them only worked so well because neither could kill the other. Hidan was essentially immortal, and Kakazu, well, he had more than one life to spare. As they made their way to the Land of Fire, they stopped by a nearby temple. There they found the head monk, named Chiriku, who was a former member of the bodyguard of the Land of Fire's Shinobi 12. Knowing the bounty on his head, Kakazu would stop by along with Hidan to attack the temple and capture Chiriku, while Hidan would go on a massacre. However, one of the monks were able to survive, escaping and making their way to the Land of Fire. They would go to the village hidden in the leaves, alerting Tsunade to what happened. Learning of the Akatsuki's presence, Tsunade would order Shizune to mobilize their new task force, the 20s Platoon, consisting of 24 four-man teams. Their mission was to scour the Land of Fire, to search for members of the Akatsuki. The Akatsuki members were to be captured alive, and if not possible, they were to be eliminated. One such captain was Asuma Sarutobi. When putting together his team, he looked at the shinobi available, both he and Shikamaru. Seeing who hadn't been registered, they decided that the best two members to add to their team were Naruto and Sakura. The reason being was that they weren't on active duty, and the fact of the matter was that Naruto and Sakura had experience and success fighting against the Akatsuki. They were aware of their rather unorthodox abilities to an extent, knowing that they were the kind of skills that could be useful in a battle. With Shikamaru's brains leading the charge, Asuma as captain, and with Naruto and Sakura backing them up, they could be just what they needed. Also to the team, Tsunade would be sending Haku as well. With each platoon, she wanted to have one medical ninja that she trusted. She knew that Haku had experience working with members of Team 7 in Naruto and Sakura. Thus, they would be able to work together rather well. And Haku was a skilled fighter in her own right, and not someone to take lightly. And she was a part of the Kazekage rescue mission, so she would be invaluable also. Before long, the 5-man team would make their way to the temple. Along the way, they would learn more about Asuma's past, and that he was also once part of the Guardians 12, and that he served the temple alongside with his friend Chiriku, who had been taken, learning that he had a bounty even greater on his head. As they combed through the surrounding areas, making their way, Zabuza would give his report from his mission to Lady Tsunade. His team had been given some time off, as he also did work personal missions on the side for the Hidden Leaf. But now that it was over, he was looking to working back with his Genin once more. As he sent out a signal, Team Konohamaru were going to be assembled on the training grounds once again, and Zabuza was going to give them a new lesson in pain, as they were going to start their training once more. Surprising to see that Konohamaru had actually been training while he was gone. With the free time he had with Naruto, he had actually taken to learning one of Naruto's key signature abilities, that being the Rasengan. In the meantime, Hidan and Kakuzu would arrive to the bounty hunter's station, where they would go to turn in the body. Hidan would sit outside since he didn't really care for such trivial things like money, while Kakuzu would stay inside collecting his payment. Outside of the station, Hidan would be sitting by himself, when suddenly, 2 Narutos from out of nowhere would stab him in the front and in the back with their kunais. Hidan realizing he had been caught off guard, Asuma would quickly go in for another attack as he moved out of the way. Everyone was a bit surprised that he didn't seem to be all too perturbed from being stabbed, as they looked and realized that he wasn't actually in any real danger. Yes, he was in pain, but he wasn't dying, despite having been fatally wounded. This moment of shock would be all that Hidan needed. As he used his 3-bladed scythe, he would cut down the 2 clones as he backed up to create space. As Asuma, Shikamaru, and Sakura came out to engage with him, he realized that they had come looking for a fight. And, based off of the description of one of them in particular, that being Naruto, he realized that they were now in the presence of the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki. Hidan remarked that this was a glorious occasion, that his god Jashin had delivered his enemy into his hands, as he held up his blade. However, Asuma would step forward first, noting that he would be Hidan's opponent. As the 3 stood back and waited, Asuma would begin his battle with Hidan, the 2 of them going blade for blade in an exchange with one another. While standing, with the blood flowing from under him, Hidan would use his feet to start to make a pentagram on the ground. As he did so, he would continue his fight with Asuma before using his scythe to nick Asuma in the cheek, getting some of his blood. He moved quickly back to the pentagram as Asuma attempted to use the burning ash jutsu, as a large black puff of smoke surrounded Hidan. Inside of the smoke, Hidan's body would physically begin to transform and change, his skin turning black with white marks around him, giving him the appearance of the Grim Reaper. The moment Asuma activated his jutsu in order to burn Hidan, he would feel half of his body being burnt as well. As the smoke cleared, they saw that Hidan had been burnt, but that he had also changed. Hidan knowing that the preparations had now been complete. In the midst of the battle, Kakuzu would appear out of nowhere, attempting to attack them. However, Naruto would hold him off. Naruto would see that he would have to have his hands full with Kakuzu. As such, he would tell Sakura to back up Shikamaru with Hidan, while Naruto turned and focused his attentions to Kakuzu. Kakuzu noting that they had actually come to the Land of Fire to capture the Nine Tails, and that this was actually a pretty big deal. But not just Naruto. They also had brought Asuma as well, another shinobi that had a bounty on his head. For Kakuzu, this was a win-win. Fulfilled the objective of the Akatsuki, as well as another payday, and a big one. However, Naruto remarked that there wasn't going to be any victory for them. As he stood poised and ready, he held his hands up as Kakuzu went in for an attack. Naruto would instantly form the Shields of Seraphim, the magical shields holding up at once against Kakuzu and his strength. Pushing him back, Naruto would create multiple clones using the images of Icon. The clones would instantly go up to Kakuzu and engage in a flurry of taijutsu. Kakuzu surprised that the clones were strong enough to match him, although he was able to take them down for the most part. Out of nowhere, he would hear the flames of Faltane, as Naruto, holding out his hands instantly, would summon the mystic flames from the fire dimension, as they burnt around Kakuzu. Kakuzu could feel that these flames were not ordinary, since they weren't made out of chakra, but they were something entirely different. He had to harden his skin in order to stand a chance. Instantly, from out of his robe, two masks would jump, before being made out of a strong-like thread, appearing behind him. Each mask had an elemental symbol on it. One was fire, and the other was lightning. Naruto would see that he would have to face off against multiple opponents with Kakuzu, and he readied himself for the next exchange. Haku, in the meantime, would fall back, looking at both battles happening simultaneously. She knew as a medic ninja, her job was to stay clear and to help in any way that she could. But she also stayed on guard, preparing to help in case either one needed assistance. While Shikamaru and Asuma would deal with Hidan. While Hidan believed that he had the upper hand, he had but one problem. That being of Sakura herself. Her abilities in the mystic arts were more than what he could have expected. You see, while the blood ritual that Hidan used was dangerous, in the end of the day, Hidan himself was not all that powerful. Yes, he was capable of fighting against some of the best of shinobi, but that was only because of his technique, a technique that allowed him to remain immortal. But even then, he was not skilled with ninjutsu or genjutsu. The only thing he had was his ritual and limited taijutsu for the most part. Sakura was easily able to counter him. Once they removed him from the pentagram, the battle was pretty much over. Hidan tried to use his scythe once more, but Sakura would move in front of him instantly. Using her chaos magic, she was able to bind and hold him in place, long enough to take the scythe, and using her magic, she disintegrated to dust, along with all of his other weapons. Once he had nothing left, she would bind and hold him in place, long enough for Asuma to cut his head off. Hidan was now immobile, and there was nothing that he could do except yell and scream. Kakuzu knew that he had to go over and help his partner, but he had a hard time doing that. Whenever he tried to get too close to Naruto, Haku would use her abilities and ice release to back him up. She used her ice clones to counter the mask, Kakuzu getting to the point that he had to use all 4 of them. Naruto's mystic abilities were just beyond anything that he were capable of. Naruto would use the chains of Krakon in order to bind and hold him in place, Kakuzu being unable to break free from the chains, as Naruto would use the winds of Watum to enhance his Rasengan, creating mystic style Wind Rasen Shuriken. This technique, you could consider, is a much more advanced version of the Wind Rasen Shuriken. Instead of using Wind Chakra, Naruto uses Wind Magic in order to enhance his Rasengan. With this, not only is the Wind Rasen Shuriken more powerful as it draws on the power of the Winds of Watum, a magical technique that comes from another dimension, as many of Dr. Strange's techniques are prone to do, but to siphon the power of the Winds of Watum truly makes the technique much more potent and much more dangerous. So much so that Kakuzu ended up losing a heart in the process, forcing him to recall back one of his masks. With Asuma and Shikamaru to assist, along with Sakura, using her abilities in the Chaos Magic Arts, she was able to overpower one of Kakuzu's masks, the Lightning Mask, with her own mystical abilities. Using the power of alchemy, she was able to move and morph the ground on its own, kind of like her own style of earthbending, but without the need for being a bender, creating pillars of earth to be able to counter before striking out herself. Haku, using her ice release, would use a few of her ice attacks in order to counter the fire mask. She would use Ice Style, 1000 Needle Jutsu, as 1000 ice needles would rain down upon Kakuzu. While Kakuzu tried to fend off his attackers, ultimately he would be defeated, as each heart was destroyed one by one. He was overmatched by Naruto and Sakura, and with the assistance of Haku, Asuma, and Shikamaru, ultimately he would be left with only one, forcing him to enter into his monstrous form, multiple needle-like threads moving all throughout his body. He truly became something out of horror. However, Naruto would stand before him, noting that he was going to finish things here. Everyone stood back as Naruto made his way towards Kakuzu. Kakuzu remarking that if he tried to fight him alone, it would be foolish. However, Naruto remarked that the only one foolish here was him and the Akatsuki. They thought that they could just go around and do whatever they want without consequence, that he was just going to roll over and die for them. However, as Naruto looked up towards Kakuzu, his eyes having a new glow, he held up his hand as the Rasengan began to form. He imbued it with the flames of Fontaine, his Rasengan turning from its bright blue to a fiery red. It started to spin faster and faster and intensify, until it felt as though Naruto was holding the very sun in his hands. Naruto would dash forward towards Kakuzu. Kakuzu sending out multiple tendrils at once towards Naruto. Naruto then took his second hand with his sling ring and formed a portal. One, though, that Kakuzu could not see, and from out of nowhere Naruto would vanish, before appearing behind him as he slammed the fiery Rasengan into his back, as Naruto would yell out to his enemy, "Mystic Art, Flame Rasengan, Burning Sun!" In a flash of bright heat, Kakuzu would be burnt to ash. His final heart would be incinerated, as Naruto's fist would appear in his chest, having burnt a hole straight through. Kakuzu would fall to the ground, dead and out of commission. From a distance, Zetsu would watch everything that happened and would leave immediately to go to his leader to tell him all that he had seen. In the meantime, once Haku had attended to all of their wounds and everyone was safe to travel, they would take the head of Hidan and his body, along with the body of Kakuzu, back to the village hidden in the leaves, where an autopsy could be done immediately, and Ibiki and the interrogation squad could begin with Hidan. Although not much would be given, as he didn't have a lot to know or a lot to say. They did learn one thing. Whoever the leader of the Akatsuki was, he went by a name known as Pain. With that, his body would be taken to the Nara clan forest, deep within where no one could find him. There he would be buried 100 feet underground, a seal being placed over his grave so as to not be recovered. And there would be the last resting place of Hidan, where he would remain until his death. With 2 more members of the Akatsuki now defeated, 4 now killed in total at the hands of Naruto and his team, Zetsu would go and speak to his leader at once, telling him of everything that had happened. His leader, the one known as Pain, realized that sooner or later they were going to have to deal with the Nine Tails directly. If he was this powerful, then there was no telling what he was capable of. However, deep within the Rain Village, another showdown was soon to take place also, as Jiraiya had finally made his way, his leads leading him to this point, as this was his next target. In the meanwhile, within one of Orochimaru's abandoned labs, Kabuto would take a few of the DNA samples, what remained of Orochimaru, as well as some of the blood of Sasuke Uchiha. He spent hours tirelessly working to morph and concoct both into something that he could absorb for himself. When he was finally able to do so, nothing had really changed for him. That was until a sharp pain struck him in the head. He fell to the ground and was writhing in agony, snake scales starting to appear on his arm, and in his forehead, a third eye would open. You see, even though he had some of the blood of Sasuke Uchiha, it didn't grant him the abilities of the Sharingan. But what it did grant him was something entirely different. Sasuke's blood had become potent from using magic. As such, you could say that Kabuto was now getting a taste of that mystic energy. He was starting to discern it. He was getting the cheat code to understand magic. But with the mixture of Orochimaru's DNA, there was also the darkness. The mystic arts and the darkness that was Orochimaru and his craving for power and knowledge. By chance, it opened the door. For some time, Kabuto would wander deep within the forest as a voice was growing in his head. A voice that he could not shake until before long, as he looked up into the sky, his eyes glowing a bright and powerful yellow with a tinge of violet. He saw something that only he could see. His eyes now peering, the darkness of his soul opening himself up, with the mystic ability flowing within him. He heard the voice of someone who had an offer that he could not refuse. As Kabuto searched deep within himself, he asked, who was this voice? Who is he, and what could he give him? The voice merely laughed, a sinister laugh. He would reveal everything within time, but for now, his name, he was more than happy to give him. My name is Dormammu. This concludes What If Naruto Was Trained by Dr. Strange? Naruto Mystic Adventures Shippuden Part 3. As always, if you're a fan of today's video and everything else that we have on the channel, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is Power Core Productions and Podcasting, so that's to come out now and in the future. Also, don't forget to leave any questions that you might have for the 2K Q&A that we're going to be doing very soon. Make sure you leave your questions down in the comment section below. And if you haven't, please check out my community tab so that you can check my Instagram if you have it. Go over, give me a follow, and there you can send me DMs, any requests or any thoughts or opinions that you might have over there as well. So don't forget to do that also. And stay tuned for tomorrow's episode as we are going to be continuing Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm Part 3. But anyway, that's going to do it for the end of today's video. I'm Javon Harrington with Power Core Productions and Podcastings. Signing off, and I'll see you next time.